All right. Okay, we're good. Finally. Quick check of notes, then we're off to the races. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are going to go through a few things today. So, as per the notes in the channel, we're going to be talking about terraforming. We'll give some updates, talk through some ship concepts, and then go from there. So, first things first, let's present with the presentation I've got live for you and get this going. So, oh, that's not it. There we go. There you go. I think that's it. I think we're good. Okay. So, yeah, it's been a few months since we did this. So, there's a bit to cover that has already been covered in some of the monthly updates. But then there's also some new things that I wanted to share with you all, which I'm quite excited about. So we'll go through all of these. So first things first, let's give you all a quick progress update. There's a few new things to cover and a couple of existing things as well. So first things first, the roadmap was updated a few days ago with things that have been completed, progress for some of the other features. And so as I've said previously, the roadmap will be continued to be updated over time as things change. We're setting like loose goals in regards to what we're trying to achieve over time. The pre-alpha stage 1 has been delayed potentially by a week. It was meant to go live tomorrow, but I had quite a few problems with the deployments, which I've needed to work through, and that sort of clashing with getting things ready for the devlog update today meant that it basically just had to be delayed. So I'll basically be working all this weekend again to try and get that stuff ready. And then hopefully have the playtesters who are invited start hopefully early next week, but potentially as late as end of next week. One cool thing came out of the discussions over the Discord is the concept of sort of private galaxies. And I had an epiphany that this would be a really good feature to have, not just for alliances and friends and that sort of thing, but also just from a testing perspective. So being able to generate galaxies that are only privately accessed by invitation, so that the playtesters can access those. The main reason for that is because once the playtest URLs are live, those URLs will be generally accessible by everybody, but I don't obviously want everybody going through and playtesting the game itself, which is when you join a galaxy. And so this is a really nice feature to have to support that. And then sort of longer term, it just means that alliances, if they've got a bunch of players that just want to play together, they can kind of schedule that in with myself and get that set up. So I think that's pretty cool. Next thing there is, this sounds like such a minor thing or such like a meh sort of thing to update you all on, but authentication account management is now done, at least for the most part. For now, there's a lot more configuration and settings that need to go into that in the future, things like notification settings and that sort of stuff. But for the time being, all of your authentication options have now been added to the game and are supported. So that includes Facebook, X, Discord, email only login, which basically means that you type in your email and then you receive an email with a one-click link, which is valid for a short period of time. And then also email and password. Some people prefer email and password as well. Yeah, that's all that. Next is infrastructure. So, I was really hoping to have infrastructure done by this weekend. It turns out there's quite a few things there that went wrong. So doing those final tests. So that in addition to the deployment issues I had, meant the infrastructure hasn't been completed yet. But we're getting super close. The ability to build structures, place them on your planet is all pretty much working, but it's just like it's all the finer details around the user experience that I want to improve. So things like the notifications to the browser, push notifications if players have those enabled, email notifications, that sort of stuff, as well as making sure that when those notifications reach the game client, that the UI is being updated as necessary. So it's kind of happening, but it's not at a place that I'm particularly happy with. So I need to keep working on that one. And then finally, I think I spent like a week and a half just working on the UI and UX for the account management stuff. Jun, JWTC, who's the other developer helping me out, he's been working on all of that social authentication and account management features. And my job, once those features were in place, was to make the UI look pretty slick. And that just took a long time to get where I want it to be. But the end result, which I'll show you pretty soon, I think is looking pretty good. Okay, so I thought we'd also talk about some aspirations over the next few months and maybe sort of heading into next year. And one of those aspirations is a timeline. So we're going to talk about just very briefly goals for the next 3 months, 3 weeks left for the year. About 4 months. September, October, November, 4 months, almost 5 months. Let's call it 5 months. To see where we get by the end of the year. And so I certainly have some objectives I really want to hit by then. The first is to complete the pre-alpha stage 2 test. So stage 1, is imminent. It's not live just yet, but we'll go out pretty soon. And stage 1 is all about testing colony management around the infrastructure side of things. And so once that's done, we move on to stage 2 stuff, which is basically research. So the pre-alpha stage 2 test will include the colony management along with the infrastructure, like I said before, as well as researching various technologies. Those two are tightly intertwined in the sense that there are structures that you can't build unless you've researched them. And so making sure that that's all in place means that the full scope of colony management is almost in place by that point. Basically the building blocks for the rest of the game will be in place. So I'd really like to have stage 2 tests done by the end of the year, which then means that depending on the timing, means we can wrap up the colony management as well as technology development, which is your research, and have that done by the end of the year. So once you sort of get to that point by the end of the year, I suspect things will start to move considerably quicker. Research, for example, I haven't started working on it specifically, but a lot of the underlying systems, things like asset dependency. So, for example, there's certain structures that require research to complete. We're already doing those checks in the code. It's just that you have no way to research them at the moment. The foundations are there. We just need to build on it. And it's taken us a really long time to kind of get to the stage 1 test because there's so much underlying architecture that has to be built before we can basically say that colony management is done. But beyond that point, once we get past colony management, then the features start to be built a lot more quickly because those underlying systems are already in place, which is why the stage 1 test for the pre-alpha is so important. We really want to make sure that everything's working properly with those underlying systems. We want to make sure that all the broadcast notifications and stuff that need to get to players are in place and are working properly. It's all quite important to have that ready. And then finally, we'll see how we go with the timing, but I'd really like to be at a place whereby players can build space stations and therefore start to produce spacecraft. So space stations sit outside your colony in space, sort of theoretically, and then inside those space stations is actually where you're producing your own spacecraft and things, and where they're launched from. So having spacecraft production in place means that we're sort of one step away from being able to test the second era. So in case you're not aware, the first era of the game is basically colony management, managing a single colony, and being able to produce spacecraft. And then era 2 is basically where you start heading off-world. So you start to set up your second and third and fourth colonies. And so, along with spacecraft production, we've also got things like, being able to build colonization spacecraft and that sort of stuff. And so once we've got to that point, then it's pretty much off to the races at that point as far as the sort of the game features are concerned. It's more about just adding content at that point. Okay, so I touched briefly on a utility that I had to build earlier in the week. And so what that sort of led to is a feature that allows me to terraform a celestial body. And what that means is, all the celestial bodies within Hearthstone Online have procedurally generated, sizes, the maps that they have, the resource nodes that you can find in them, the baseline resources that they produce, all this sort of stuff. And when it comes to, being able to run galaxies that are sort of more competitive in nature. In order to do that, it basically means that you need to ensure that players have the exact same jumping off point. So everybody has the exact same planet size, they have the exact same map, they have the exact same resource nodes and the baseline resources from which to build from. Because if that aspect of it is too random, it means that some players are going to have really crappy planets to start from, and some players will have really good planets to start from. And so in order to do that, when a player first launches their empire and they colonize that first world, which is basically their home world, then what happens is that the terraformer, which is what it's literally called in the code, takes that celestial body and converts it to what we're calling a sort of a starter world or a home world. And all of the settings for what a home world, like what constitutes a home world in terms of its configuration, is completely configurable within our Galaxy generation tool as well. So it's all very exciting. And then after I built that, I realized, hang on a second, this is a pretty cool feature for players to be able to do. And so what that means is that I'm currently working through the game design documentation in regards to how terraforming would work, what players will be able to do, and what features the code needs to support to be able to do that. Terraforming is obviously going to be something that's sort of era 2 or maybe even beyond that, maybe era 3 for players. But just some ideas I'm throwing around my head is basically being able to regenerate the hex map and regenerate the resource nodes and regenerate the baseline resources for that. But exactly how that functions and how it will work, I don't know yet. So we'll see what happens. And obviously, if you have some ideas or suggestions in regards to how you think it should work, or maybe some features or game mechanics you'd like to see in respect to the terraformer, then please let me know. Okay, cool. So one of the questions that was raised in the Discord was, what kind of spacecraft might we see in the game? So this is just concept art, AI generated concept art, trying to find sort of the right look for the factions that we're going through. And so we showed off one, I think, as part of a post a few months ago, which is the human cruiser. So I'm going to show that one again, and in case you haven't seen that. But this is the human cruiser. The cruiser is the second tier spacecraft that you can build. So I believe it goes frigate, cruiser, battle cruiser, destroyer, and then sort of up from there. So this is sort of the second sized spacecraft that you can build, and this is one of the human cruisers. In reality, all the factions will have these different ship types, but obviously have different capabilities depending on the faction that you're playing. Next one I'm going to show off is the Durok cargo hauler. So there'll absolutely be ways for you to move resources between your worlds, as well as trade resources with others. And in order to do that, you're going to need cargo haulers to be able to transfer those resources across. Cargo haulers will also be necessary when it comes to raiding other players' colonies. Without them, you have no way of taking your loot back to the origin from where the fleet came from. And so, players will be building, I'd say, quite a few of these. You need them for trade. You need them for moving resources around. And so the Durok, from a faction design perspective, sort of aesthetically, are much more blocky and sort of, they sort of look heavier and more solid than others. And then finally, we've got the Nefim battle cruiser. Nefim, if you saw the concept art that I shared a little while ago, they are, what do you say? I guess the most alien looking, despite the fact that they're still humans. And this is all as a result of the sort of the worlds that they landed on, which being quite toxic and affecting them in various ways. And so they've sort of lent into that visage that they now possess, which creates sort of anxiety and fear in the other human factions. And so they've brought that along with their spacecraft design as well. And the idea behind the Nefim is that they're sort of like hit and run. It's sort of like a hit and run faction. So they're quite fast. They bring a lot of firepower. And so hopefully the spacecraft, once we've finished designing them, sort of encapsulate some of that feel and that vision for the faction's design. Okay, so we'll stop there for the time being. What I'm going to do now is work and show you some in-game stuff, which I think is going to be pretty cool. So when I say in-game stuff, it's obviously going to be quite limited, but that's okay. So we'll switch over here now. I'll switch over to the demo reel, if you will. Hopefully that's... I don't think that's showing. Hang on a second. Let me just change this. This one. Yeah, there we go. I'm not sure why I lost that, but whatever. Okay, so some of you wanted to see user interface updates, things we've been doing with that. So I'm hoping to show that to you today. We'll show a little bit of in-game features, but not much. And the main reason for that is just because the pre-alpha stage 1 has not been completed yet. And so I don't want to be showing off stuff that could be broken, but we'll still go and have a look anyway. So first things first, I'm already logged in. I'm not going to re-log in. The reason for that is because my account at the moment on my test is set to use one-click logins. Meaning I need to alt-tab to my email and click that and that sort of thing. So, but in reality, excuse me. In reality, if you come back to the game and it's actually already logged in, so you've still got an active session, when you click the play button, it just takes you straight through to the game. There's no need to log in there. Logins last, I think, for about 24 hours, might be 48 hours, I can't remember. And of course, you can, whatever your preferred, if you like using social platforms to log in, you can do that. That's probably the least friction way of accessing the game because it's basically one click. Whereas email and email password is a little bit more involved. But anyways, regardless. So first things first, this is the Galaxy list screen. This has gone through some evolution already and is likely to go through a few more. I'm still not quite happy with how it looks. And the reason for that is because I just think I'm not happy with the way things are sort of laid out. I think the Galaxy collection needs to be front and center. I think things like the legend on the left there with the game modes and all that sort of stuff is, I don't know, maybe a bit too prominent on the page. It is a page. This is still a website, a web page this is being run from. And so, long term, you'll see multiple galaxies here, and the galaxies that you've already joined will be presented first. And then if you want to join other galaxies, you absolutely can. On the top left here, we've got our basically our in-app. You used to tell I'm a web app developer, but in-app, in-game menu. So this is just like it's a bunch of shortcuts to stuff for the game, which isn't necessarily specific to the game play itself, except maybe sort of some account settings and that sort of thing. But you've got your Galaxy list page, which takes you back to this screen here. You've got the guide, which is not in place yet and probably won't be until hopefully before launch, but we'll see what happens there. I'm still trying to figure out what to do there. I'd really love to have like an in-game sort of step-by-step guide that takes you through each of the steps as you're playing. That's the ideal, but that's obviously a lot of time and energy and effort to get that working. So initially we might just do like some videos or something and show how to play the game. Otherwise, we'll do if we've got the time. We'll build a full guide. It really comes down to how complicated players feel the game is. If they feel the game is really hard to kind of get going on, there's a bunch of things we probably need to address there, such as looking at the actual game's complexity. Maybe it's too difficult, or maybe it's too complicated. Maybe we need to take a look at that. But if players think the complexity is in the right place, but it's still a bit difficult to understand, how to go about playing the game, then I think we'll need some sort of in-game guide. So as I said before, I've been doing a lot of work on the account management stuff. Again, it doesn't look like much. There really isn't much here. But by the same token, again, this is sort of all of those underlying systems and architecture to support numerous features moving forward. The main things that you can manage and change at the moment: contact information, your email address, obviously, and then your authentication mechanism. So we've sort of built this full custom authentication mechanism architecture, which allows you to link all these social accounts that you want. You'll see here that it says your account does not have a password, and that's because when you first sign up, it's just email, and you log in by clicking a one link in your email, and this will be true also. One of the things that took a lot of time also sort of a little while ago now was developing the front end user interface so that we could run it in the browser or on your mobiles or in a tablet or as part of an installable application or, hopefully, fingers crossed in future, a Steam-based game. And in order to do that, it means that we've had to, things like the one-click login need to be able to sign you in on the other device you're on. So for example, if you are in maybe you've installed the game client on your mobile, when you sign in on email, when you click that link and it opens up in your browser, it actually logs you in on the device that you're on, which I think is a really cool way to go about that. But it's quite tricky to kind of get that all going. But if you prefer password, you can create a password, set all your things in here. You've got your little sort of visibility stuff for your passwords, and then save the email once you're ready to do so. Otherwise, you can link your various social accounts, which I'm pretty jazzed about, to be honest. And that's that. Quick thing here is you've got both name and alias. Name is required and will be shown in the game. However, if you don't want to show your real name, you want to remain anonymous within the game itself, then you need to provide. You can provide an alias, and the game will preferentially use that one over your first name if it's been provided. So that allows you to do that. And that's it for those ones. So let's go back to here, see if anyone's there. Nope, not yet. Okay, let's continue. So just make sure I'm all focused here. Yep, looks like it's good. Okay, so a few things to talk about when it comes to the game legend over there on the left-hand side. There's a bunch of icons there, which you may have read through already if you're pretty quick. But there's, as I've talked about in the articles, there's going to be, at least at the start, 2 separate game modes. Campaign game mode is definitely coming down later down the track, prior to launch, hopefully. But it changes the way you're able to navigate and within the game itself in regards to what sectors you can access, and it also limits. What am I trying to say here? It also has some impact in regards to the. Just trying to think how to explain this. At the moment, let's put it this way: your empire is galaxy specific, but if you're playing a campaign, your empire is actually played against sort of multiple rounds, and each round is broken down by sector. So sectors have a number of systems and celestial bodies within them, and so I need to be able to build the mechanics so that if you are playing in one sector, you can't access other sectors within that round. At least that's the goal. So you're basically fighting for and playing in specific sectors, and then as you sort of win those battles within those campaigns or lose, then you're able to select certain perks for your empire, which sort of kicks off during the next round, which I think is pretty exciting. But there's quite a bit to do there to support that. So I really want to have that ready for launch. But whether we do or not really comes down to how difficult a job that's going to be. But I'm trying to do the best I can at the moment to architect all of the queries and the limitations of stuff around what players actually have access to. Obviously looking forward towards campaign mode. And then classic game mode is like, games of old, Starsphere, Planetarium, O-Game, these sorts of things, the way they sort of play. And the games back then, I haven't played O-Game in a long time, so things might have changed, but they basically played for sort of 3 to 6 months per round. And then you get your score, and then they'd record that, and then you move on to the next round. So classic game mode is very much in that sort of wheelhouse. Everything's open to you. You've got access to a full galaxy of sectors and systems, and it plays for about 3 months in a general season. But that game time can be brought forward or expanded depending on how players want to play. I suspect probably the PV. We'll talk about hostility next. So hostility basically just means whether PvP is enabled or not. PvP obviously meaning player versus player, and PvE meaning player versus environment. So PvP galaxies are basically PvPvE, meaning that you're versing players and you're versing the environment as well. Whereas PvE is just versus the environment. You can't actually attack other players. And so, you might be asking, well, why would you play PvE mode? And the reason is because it'll just be a bit more relaxing. The AI factions will certainly be attacking you, and you'll be able to engage with them in various game-generated PvE missions. But otherwise, it's really about colony management, just expanding your empire and making it nice and as big as you can within that round. And, some players definitely want that and definitely want to play that, and that includes myself. I like PvP, but by the same token, I also love SimCity and games like it. City Skylines, just being able to sit back and just see your city grow. And so I think that's a game mode that's going to be a lot of fun and much more relaxing. And it's also just a way for players to, sort of just test out various builds and things without being harassed by players, by other players. So, and then finally we've got access. So generally, galaxies will be public access. Anybody can join them up to a particular point in time, and we'll go through that a little bit later. But the little envelope here means by invitation. So for this test galaxy that I've set up, Soluna, you can only access it if your player account has been invited to play in that galaxy, and then you get to join that. And that's that. So, the goal here is that hopefully we have lots of players. We've got a few different game modes running at once. So I think the ideal sort of outcome here is that I would have a PvP galaxy in classic mode, a PvE galaxy in classic mode, and then a PvP campaign galaxy as well. I would just play it over multiple sectors. So if we could launch, I probably won't launch with that many galaxies. I think it'd be best just to launch with a classic PvP galaxy. And the reason for that is just because number of players. If we can get a few thousand players playing right off the bat, I mean, that's going to be amazing. We could probably have the capacity and the availability of multiple galaxies. But if it's a small number of players, then keeping it to a small selection, I think, makes a lot of sense. And in the future, on this galaxy list page, you'll also see how many players have actually joined the galaxy, and you'll see how many players are actually playing at that time. We've set up the technology and stuff to be able to do that as well. So it's not in place at the moment. I mean, the underlying architecture is, I know how many players are in the game at any one time, but showing it here just needs a little bit more, a little more work to be done before we can do that. Okay, so let's step in. So let's join the galaxy. Well, not join, continue. Okay, so this obviously still a lot of work in progress here. This is the colony overview page, which is not really fleshed out. There's a lot of work to be done here. But generally speaking, when you come to the overview page, you'll see at a glance your resource production. You'll see what you're building in your infrastructure. You'll see what things are being researched. You'll see what spacecraft are currently being produced. You'll see what missions are currently active. You'll see whether there's hostile incoming hostile fleets. You'll see your trades. That's all sort of focused on that specific colony. So there's and obviously that information or that data just isn't available yet because the features haven't been built. But long term, it'll all be shown right here. And then along the left hand side there, we've got your baseline resources. So I don't think I've gone into much detail in regards to how this functions. So on the left here, we've got the resources, and we've also got the resource nodes. So I need to think about how to communicate that properly. But basically, the resource nodes are what you see in your colony's geography on the hex map. The resources, however, are your baseline resources. These are things that are accessible by your colony, basically sort of like on the surface of the planet. So this particular colony has 3 materials baseline and 3 energy baseline. And this is really important for the resource production stats and sort of how those mechanics all work. So it all works off these base levels. And then your nodes provide bonuses if you build the appropriate structures on those nodes, which is obviously something you're going to want to do. And so moving forward, long term, you're going to be trying to find planets that have high baseline values for the resources that you really need in your empire, in combination with the right combination of nodes to be able to support that. And nodes basically provide multipliers to these when you build the structures on them. So in case it doesn't make any sense, if you haven't read any of the articles, I'll go over it a little bit at the moment. Energy is just like the energy that you're producing through various means. So it could be through the solar plants, could be solar arrays that you've built in space. It could be your extractor, which harvests materials from the planet's surface and below. It could be, whatever else. And then these installation field is for solar energy generation. Materials deposit is obviously for your extractor for producing materials. And there'll be other ones as well in the future, which are all in the game, but I'm not going to show them off yet. We want to keep things, some things as a surprise. Next there, we're going to have a quick look at the system. Now, I put this together really quickly because I just wanted to show you guys some stuff. Some of you may be dubious in regards to the fact that these galaxies are procedurally generated. And so I wanted to show off a little bit of that. And then a little bit later, I'll show you, we'll basically generate a new galaxy together and then join that galaxy and see how that goes. So first things first, let's go over to the system. So when you go to the system, again, this is really quickly thrown together, so it looks pretty bad, but when you go to the system, you'll see your parent star for that celestial body. And the stars generated can be very different. It could be yellow star, could be red star, could be a red dwarf, it could be a blue star, whatever it might be. And all of those traits then impose implications for the insolation on the stars, celestial bodies that it has within that system. So higher insolation or higher sort of solar production from those stars means higher insolation values on the celestial bodies, but that also has implications for other things as well. So it's all pretty interesting. So there's a lot to do there in regards to not the insolation values, because that's all basically in place already, but just having the appropriate artwork and the right sizes and all sorts of things. And then over on the right here, we've got the basically all of the celestial bodies that you can find within that system. And you can cycle through them up here. For some reason, I couldn't get this working. I don't know why it's not, but basically these are all the different systems. So we started at we're supposed to start at 203. So our colony is actually at Sector 2, the third system, and the 7th celestial body in that system. And that's the same thing here. So if I go down to number 7, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it's this one here. Oh no, wait. Not that one, this one here. That's actually the last one in the system. That's pretty interesting. And it's 19 astronomical units out. So it's way out there in the system. So in reality, if we go back actually to the colony, what you would actually see here, because it's so far out, you'd probably see an ice planet or something like that, rather than this, which is more like a desert planet or some sort of rocky planet. And so, the distance, all of this stuff has an impact in regards to the resources that are available on that celestial body. And I'm really, pretty jazzed about that. I think it introduces some really interesting combinations between them. The other thing you'll notice here, aside from the distance and the coordinates, is actually the size of the planet. So planet size is a thing. At the moment, there are 4 different planet sizes. It looks like we've got a 1. Oh, that's a 1 there. That's a 2. I think this one's a 3. These are 3s or 4s. 3s or 4s, whatever it might be. And basically what that means is that the larger the planet is, the larger the hex map is. So you have more capacity and availability to build structures. So that could be things like your core sort of civilian structures, like your extractor and your manufactory. It might be you've got more space to place defensive structures. So defensive structures are actually the only thing, or one of the only structures you can place that you can have multiple of on a colony. Everything else is unique per colony. So you can only have one manufactory. You can only have one, solar plant and their various solar fields. But defensive structures you can have more of. So the larger the planet, the more defensive structures you can have. But also by the same token, the more defensive structures you have, the more energy that you require from your host, from the host planet. So. Like I said, you can actually cycle through these. So this is 0204, I think. And again, you've got a real big planet right close to the star there. Heading out further, you've got a few smaller planets. The way this works is, generally speaking, you have smaller planets sort of closer to the star, the parent star, and way out further. But it can change depending on all sorts of things. But generally, it's weighted in that sort of way. So similar to our own solar system. Let's go through a few more of these. This one's got quite a few, it looks like. We've got 10 planets on that one, 8 on this one. As you can see here, we've actually just changed sectors. So we started at 0203. I can go back here. We're back to the previous sector. So spent a little bit of time last night ensuring that the navigator across systems, you can actually look at systems across sectors without no changes. So basically think about it as like a ring that's going around in circles. It looks like then there's only 2 sectors in this particular galaxy. So what we'll do is we'll generate a galaxy here in a minute. Oh man, look at that. 34 AU. It's way out there. There's Nibiru there. But yeah, so we'll go through those other ones as well. Let's see how many systems are in this one actually. We've got 104. So there's 4 systems in that sector. So this is a very small galaxy. It might be the type of galaxy that maybe you want for your alliance to play with and have a lot of combat, things going on, fighting for various resources. But generally speaking, the public galaxies will be much, much, much bigger. We can have as many or as few sectors as we want, and as many systems or as few systems as we want, and same with the celestial bodies as well. So yeah, that's that. Okay, just very briefly now, we're going to go back to the overview, put things in, and I just want to really quickly just go through some of the infrastructure stuff. I really wanted to show off the hex map, but we're not going to show off anything more than that and sort of what that looks like. So let's open up infrastructure. You can see here that the hex map for that planet is revealed, and this is generated based off the size of the planet, along with a little bit of randomness for every single planet. Like I said before, homeworlds, when you first launch your empire and you colonize your homeworld, all the homeworlds are very, very similar. So in this particular galaxy, I think I set this, the homeworld size to 2, so planet size 2, with 2 resource nodes available. And those resource nodes are insulation and materials deposits. And, that's, I can configure it however I want. So, we might have some galaxies where maybe polonium is available on your homeworld, straight away, so that you can basically just, tech rush to maybe some of your more advanced things and then expand, which I think is a pretty cool idea as well. So these are all the hexes. Obviously, I've got nothing built at the moment. I can select a hex, and it shows that there. You'll notice these are the locations for the resource nodes for this particular celestial body. If I click on the one with the materials deposit, you'll notice it also shows up here on the selected hex for the construction. And similarly, if I select the insulation field hex, it shows up there as well. It's not done yet, but basically what that will mean is that in future, it will show the structures that would prefer to be on those hexes first before showing other ones. So it'll be a nice sort of like UX change. These are all the available structures at the moment that I can actually build at the moment. And then if I go to all, these are all of the available structures. Not available. These are all the structures basically within the game at the moment. Obviously, this is very early on. I've only added a few there for testing purposes. But if I select one of these, for example, shows me the costs, shows me any requirements that are missing. 1 second. Of course, the manufactory is the first structure, the first action basically you take when you join a galaxy is build a manufactory. So it has no requirements outside of time and cost, and then also the build time. And again, this is just testing. Your first build is not going to be 16 minutes; it'll be seconds. And then finally, we'll go over here. Look at some of these other ones. You can see here it tells you exactly what the dependency is that it has that it's missing, which is super important. So this one requires a manufactory at tier 1. So until I build that manufactory, I can't actually build this one. You've got things like the laboratory. So the laboratory requires 4 energy, which I'm short of at the moment. I've only got 3 energy available to me to build and produce and research things. And so I need to somehow increase my energy before I being able to do that. And that also requires a manufactory. And then if we go all the way up to the observatory, this is essentially the chain of dependencies that it has. So you need to build a manufactory, then you need to build a laboratory, then you need to research optical systems before you can build an observatory and all that sort of thing. So I mentioned it in the Discord the other day, I'm playing with a game mechanic around this resource value, which we'll talk about probably a bit more in the future. But otherwise, yeah, that's that. And you select that one and away you go. That's pretty cool. It's getting there. Still obviously a long ways to go before we do anything else. One of the questions that was asked in the Discord is around sort of queue capacity. So I thought I'd talk about that just a little bit before we close off for today. So first things first, let's go back to the infrastructure page actually, infrastructure screen. There's a couple of different areas where queues, or queue slots, I should say, become important, also known as build capacity. So when you're building structures, you can only build one structure at a time, but you can queue them. So the manufactory, it's not shown here at the moment, but all of your structures have what are called the basic expansions you can build for them called districts. And each district, some structures have multiple different districts that you can build. Others have, sorry, excuse me, have maybe like just one district, but maybe you can build multiple of them. So for example, the manufactory has the assembly plant district that you can build, and that gets attached to the structure. So you can actually build, you actually need to build them next to the, let's say I built the manufactory here, I might build 3 assembly plants alongside that. So one of the things I was talking about many months ago was this sort of mini game around how you build out your colonies. Some planning is required. So for example, this is a materials deposit. Extractor can also have 3 separate districts built alongside it. If that's here, for example, you'd only be able to build 2. Or maybe if it's up here and you've got 3 there. So then you need to be, okay, well, I don't want my manufactory over here because then I wouldn't be able to make all use of these slots for the extractor. So maybe I need to build the manufactory down here. So it's really important that you plan out where you're building things based on the nodes that are available and what structures you'll likely build on that planet. Because the homeworlds are quite small, you've got just enough space basically to build your launch pad. So just enough space to, and maybe kind of a little bit of space for some defense. You've got just enough space there to get to the launch pad, and then the launch pad builds your space station. And so it's really important that you plan that out. So coming back to queues, when you build your manufactory, after you've built it, you'll then be able to build districts alongside that. Each assembly plant that you build adds another queue slot to your construction queue. So if you have 3 assembly plants built, that's basically 4 structures you can have in your build queue. So 1 that's in progress and then 3 that are currently queued. And the same is true for things like research, which I haven't got to yet, but the laboratory has ways of adding queue slots so that you can queue up different research. And I'm also playing around the idea of being able to build research or produce multiple things at the same time, in addition to the queues, to make your sort of colony hyper productive. But that has, a lot of implications around sort of galaxy timing and when you reach the end game and all sorts of stuff. So, I need to think through that quite a bit before we go any further. Okay, cool. Hi, Blake. Blake's joined us now as well. So we're actually just about to wrap up there. So, Blake, if you have any questions for me, I'll see if I can answer them. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up there. Takes a few seconds to get through, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, I'm really excited about this. The immediate focus at the moment is just to get everything ready for the pre-alpha stage 1 test. Like I said, I'm running a bit behind. I'll be working really hard tonight to see how far along I can get with that. But then also, doing a lot more work over the weekend. So we'll see how we go with that. But yeah, see if there's any questions. Yes, are you doing better? I presume that's in relation to my personal life. I'm not sure, but yeah, look, I am ups and downs, as you might expect, with everything that's been happening. So, but yeah, making progress, and Halcyon Online is a really great distraction from all of that stuff, and it's just it's a lot of fun to work on. So I really enjoy working on it. So yeah, all right. I think that's it for today. Thank you for those of you who tuned in or will be tuning in the future. But until then, I'm out.